Water has an ancient, brutal memory. Rivers don't just flow. They remember, they forget, and sometimes they erase entire civilizations with a single, devastating shift. In the heartland of America, where geography writes history in liquid ink, one town learned this brutal lesson in a way no community ever expects. The Mississippi River Basin has always been a landscape of constant transformation. Geological records show rivers are living entities, not static boundaries. They breathe, expand, contract, and occasionally decide to completely abandon their established paths. Picture a thriving community in the late 1800s, built meticulously along a river's gentle curve. Wooden storefronts, a bustling post office, families who believed they had found permanent ground. The town's entire economic ecosystem depended on the river's predictable rhythm: water for crops, transportation, daily life. Merchants calculated their investments, farmers planted their fields, children learned to swim in familiar currents. No one anticipated the geological drama about to unfold. Hydrological changes are rarely dramatic in human time. They happen incremental: a small erosion here, a sediment deposit there. Rivers don't just move, they migrate, carve new channels, and abandon old paths like restless wanderers seeking new territories. Here's the first section. What happens when a river decides a town no longer belongs in its narrative? The answer lies in the haunting story of a forgotten settlement where water became both creator and destroyer. But over decades, these microscopic shifts can transform landscapes completely. For this unnamed town, the river's decision would be catastrophic and sudden. The first signs were subtle. Farmers noticed slight changes in water flow, unexpected sandbars emerging where none existed before. Local geologists would later describe these as preliminary indicators of a massive hydraulic transformation. But to the townspeople, these were merely curious anomalies, not harbingers of total destruction. Within a few short years, the river's course shifted dramatically. What was once a gentle, predictable waterway became an unpredictable force of geological reconfiguration. The town's carefully constructed infrastructure, bridges, mills, agricultural systems, suddenly found themselves disconnected, isolated, rendered obsolete by nature's indifferent redesign. The river had effectively written this community's death sentence, not through violence, but through patient, relentless geographical reconstruction. Imagine walking through this town as the river's transformation becomes unavoidable. Buildings slowly tilting, foundations crumbling, the very ground beneath residents' feet becoming increasingly unstable. This wasn't just a geographical event. It was a profound human tragedy, a complete erasure of generations of human effort and dreams. The river had chosen its new path, and in doing so, it transformed a living, breathing community into what we now call a ghost town, a silent memorial to the ephemeral nature of human settlement against the backdrop of geological time. The river's transformation was gradual at first, almost imperceptible to the townspeople who had built their entire lives along its banks. Historical records suggest that the initial geological shifts began subtly, with small erosion patterns that seemed unremarkable. Water has an extraordinary patience, carving new pathways with a persistence that human structures cannot resist. Local geological surveys from that period reveal fascinating details about the river's slow migration. Each spring flood brought minor changes, depositing sediment in new locations, and slowly undermining the riverbanks where homes and businesses stood. The town's residents, generations deep in their connection to this landscape, initially saw these changes as mere seasonal variations, not realizing they were witnessing the prelude to their community's complete dissolution. Agricultural patterns were the first to reveal the profound environmental transformation. Farmlands that had been fertile for decades suddenly experienced dramatic changes in water access. Irrigation channels that once reliably fed crops became increasingly unpredictable, with water sources shifting mysteriously. Farmers who had inherited land from their grandparents found themselves facing unprecedented challenges, their generational knowledge suddenly rendered obsolete by the river's capricious movement. The geological evidence tells a remarkable story of natural disruption. Core samples from the region show that rivers are not static entities but living, breathing systems with their own complex dynamics. This particular river had been slowly accumulating sedimentary changes for decades, building potential energy that would eventually reshape the entire regional topography. What seemed like a sudden event was actually the culmination of centuries of microscopic transformations. Economic impacts cascaded quickly through the community's infrastructure. As water sources became unreliable, businesses that depended on river proximity, mills, transportation routes, fishing enterprises, began to collapse. Municipal records from that period paint a picture of increasing desperation, with town leaders desperately seeking solutions to stem the inevitable environmental migration. Oral histories collected decades later revealed the human drama behind these geological shifts. The town's economic backbone was being systematically dismantled by forces far beyond human control. Families who had lived in the area for generations spoke of a profound sense of loss, not just of land, but of identity. The river wasn't just changing its course, it was erasing generations of human memory and collective experience. Each abandoned structure, each dried-up irrigation channel became a testament to nature's ultimate sovereignty over human settlement. The river's new path would ultimately become the definitive boundary between what was and what would never be again. Its relentless movement carved a new narrative into the landscape, transforming a thriving community into a silent memorial of geological transformation. The ghost town was not just a physical location, but a profound metaphor for humanity's fragile relationship with the natural world. The transformation began subtly, almost imperceptibly. Geological records suggest that rivers don't change course overnight, but through a complex dance of erosion, sediment deposition, and environmental pressure. The townspeople first noticed small shift, tiny alterations in the riverbank, subtle movements that seemed innocuous at first glance. Water, that most patient of sculptors, was slowly rewriting the landscape's fundamental geography. Local hydrologists would later document the phenomenon as a classic case of river avulsion, a sudden, dramatic shift in a waterway's primary channel. Unlike gradual erosion, avulsion represents a violent geographical reset, where the river essentially abandons its established path and carves an entirely new route. For the inhabitants of this unnamed town, this wasn't just a scientific curiosity. It was an existential threat unfolding in real time. Farmlands that had been meticulously cultivated for generations suddenly found themselves disconnected from their water source. Irrigation channels that once promised bountiful harvests became dry, cracked arteries cutting meaninglessly through parched earth. Infrastructure crumbled with shocking rapidity. Water wells that had sustained the community for decades became useless, their depths now disconnected from the river's new trajectory. Municipal planning, that delicate human attempt to control natural systems, revealed its fundamental fragility. Roads that once ran parallel to the river's edge now led nowhere, terminated abruptly by newly formed banks and unexpected geological formations. The psychological impact was perhaps most devastating. A community's sense of identity is deeply rooted in its physical environment, and this sudden geographical transformation challenged everything residents understood about their home. Families that had lived in the same location for generations now felt like strangers in their own landscape. The river's movement wasn't just a physical event, it was a profound metaphorical displacement, erasing generations of collective memory and shared experience. Economic collapse followed the geographical disruption with merciless efficiency. Businesses that had been strategically positioned along the river's original course found themselves stranded, cut off from transportation routes and water resources. What had once been a thriving community was rapidly becoming a testament to nature's indifferent power. Historians would later document this event as a perfect case study of environmental transformation. The river's course change wasn't just a local tragedy, but a powerful illustration of how geological processes can fundamentally alter human settlements. As the decades passed, the abandoned town became more than just a geographical curiosity. It transformed into a haunting memorial of nature's unforgiving power. Researchers began mapping the river's original course, tracing the intricate geological shifts that had erased an entire community from the landscape. Satellite imagery and geological core samples revealed a complex narrative of erosion, sediment deposition, and tectonic movements that had conspired to redirect the water's path. Local indigenous tribes had long understood what modern science was only beginning to comprehend. Their oral histories spoke of rivers as living entities, capable of sudden and dramatic transformations. Elder narratives described how water could be both a life-giver and a destroyer, moving with an almost sentient unpredictability that defied human engineering and settlement plans. These ancestral stories now read like prophetic warnings against the hubris of permanent human infrastructure. The ghost town became a pilgrimage site for environmental researchers and historians. Each crumbling foundation told a story of resilience and vulnerability. The remnants of buildings, their wooden frames bleached by decades of sun, their brick walls slowly dissolving back into the earth, served as a stark reminder of human settlements' fragile relationship with natural systems. Geologists would spend years studying this location, using it as a critical case study in river dynamics and environmental transformation. Most fascinating was how quickly nature reclaimed the abandoned spaces. Native grasses sprouted through cracked foundations, mesquite trees took root in what were once town squares, and small mammals began establishing complex ecosystems within the skeletal remains of human habitation. The river's new course had not just destroyed a town, it had created an entirely new ecological zone, a living laboratory of environmental adaptation. By documenting this story, we reveal something profound about human settlements and natural systems. Every abandoned town carries a narrative of struggle, adaptation, and ultimately, the humbling reality that our constructions are temporary against geological timescales. The river that changed course didn't just erase a town. It wrote a new chapter in the ongoing story of landscape evolution. For those fascinated by these hidden histories, our Ghost Town Files series continues to uncover remarkable stories of human resilience and natural transformation. Our next exploration awaits, promising even more incredible revelations from the forgotten corners of human experience. If you've been captivated by this journey, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Each video is a portal into forgotten landscapes, untold stories, and the remarkable ways our world continuously reshapes itself, sometimes overnight, sometimes over centuries.